Hey guys, welcome to Monday Night Huddle Group. And tonight we are going to start our journey in being blessed in the Beatitudes. Jesus starts his greatest sermons with the following words: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Guys, this is where it starts. Have you noticed in the New Testament how Jesus seemed repulsed by the spiritually prideful Pharisees? Yet he showed so much love and mercy to the humble, the desperate, and the spiritual outsiders. He often told parables with this dichotomy. There's the parable about the two men who went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee who stood in a place of prominence and thanked God for how righteous he was. And then there was the hated tax collector who hid in the corner and bowed his head in shame, beating his chest in disgust, asking God for mercy. Jesus said it was that guy who went home justified, not the proud Pharisee. Or what about the parable of the Good Samaritan? In Jesus' story, the Jewish religious type saw the beaten man in the ditch and they passed over on the other side of the road to avoid him. But the Samaritan, the hated, half-breed, doctrinally confused Samaritan, he saw the Jewish man who was beaten up, and he had compassion. At great personal cost, he cared for the man. He paid all of his expenses. And Jesus made the point often. You remember the Syrophoenician woman, or Zacchaeus, or the Samaritan woman at the well, or the many beggars and lepers and blind and paralyzed and Roman soldiers and demon-possessed and other disdained and disenfranchised people that Jesus loved and healed and helped? They all had two things in common. First, they were considered spiritual nobodies, sinners by the religious elite. And second, Jesus sought them out. On the other hand, do you remember the rich young ruler who had kept all the commandments from his youth? He went away sad that Jesus asked too much of him. Or what about Nicodemus? Remember, he was a member of the exalted Sanhedrin. He met Jesus at night. Was he embarrassed to be associated with Jesus? We don't know. And he was completely confused that Jesus said, "You must be born again." He was already physically and spiritually mature. How could this be? The good news for Nicodemus is that he apparently finally humbled himself enough to receive Jesus by the time of the crucifixion a couple of years later. But most of the spiritual who's who of the Jesus day were excluded and rejected by Jesus because of one primary reason. They believed in their own goodness. They thought they had a lot to offer God. They could not see themselves as spiritually sick or poor in spirit. But often they could see the unfitness of others. In Mark chapter 2, Jesus invited a tax collector named Matthew to follow him. He did, and then invited Jesus to a party with all of his undesirable friends. In fact, this is what it says. Many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And the scribes and the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." That's pretty incredible, isn't it? That Jesus came for the ones who had problems, who had needs. See, the real question is, do you see yourself as good or spiritual or religious? Do you think of yourself as having something to offer God? Do you feel pretty healthy, faith-wise? Or do you think, as we say in Tennessee, "I'm okay"? If so, here's the truth. You can have no part in Jesus. You're not invited. He's not seeking you out because you're not getting it. Here's another truth. You're not okay. The Bible is clear that we're all unworthy sinners. Let me read Romans chapter 3, 9 through 18. It says this: "All, both Jews and Greeks, are under sin. As it is written, none is righteous, no, not one. No one understands, no one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery, and the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes." Now we know, he says, whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be held accountable to God. For by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. Guys, Romans chapter 3:23 really sums the whole thing up. It says this, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Guys, that means me. That means you. We have all sinned before God. And this is something that's foundational for us to understand. Even those of us who have received Christ, we still sin. In fact, Paul, who wrote Romans, admitted his own struggle with sin. Let me read it. He said in Romans chapter 7, 13 through 19, it was sin producing death in me through what is good, in order that sin might be shown to be sin, and through the commandment might become sinful beyond measure. For we know that the law is spiritual. For I am of the flesh, sold under sin. For I do not understand my own actions, Paul said. For I do not do what I want, but the very thing that I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. And this, guys, even some longtime Christians still battle with persistent, ensnaring sins in their life. Some struggle with addictions. Paul's own struggle may resonate with you if you find yourself in that category. You feel caught. You do what you hate. You feel defeated. It's like nothing good dwells in you. You're helpless. That's because nothing good dwells in you. You are helpless. The sooner you admit this, the sooner you will be a person Christ will pursue and save and empower. He's come for the sick, not the well. That is, the ones who think they're well, because nobody's well. Jesus' most famous sermon starts with this absolute necessity. Jesus walked to a mountaintop and he looked at the crowd of thousands that had followed him. And the first words out of his mouth were, we just read it, blessed are the poor in spirit. Guys, the word blessed is the English word that's translation of the Greek word makarios, which can be also translated happy or completely content, or a privileged one who receives God's favor. I told you guys last couple weeks ago, in Greek thought, it was a word used of the happiness and powerful, of the powerful and immortal gods who had everything. You know, I often wonder how it must have gone over to the crowd that day, the first time Jesus told them that they could be blessed and completely happy. And then to see their faces when he said that those who would be blessed must be poor in spirit. Spiritual poverty. I mean, what does that mean? It means spiritual bankruptcy, possessing no spiritual worth or value. Jesus is saying that the essential first step to finding contentment in God's blessing is to recognize the fact that you are broken and sinful and cannot fix or save yourself. You're helpless. We got to admit it. God knows your sins. They all lay before his eyes, uncovered. He knows your internet history, and even if you've successfully hidden it from everybody else, every video, every picture, every fantasy you've entertained, he knows all the untruths and the times you have pretended to have it all together. He knows about what you do in the shower. He knows about what you're thinking about when you're thinking about the woman in the office or in the class or next door or at the gym. He knows the little lies you've told to get yourself out of a jam and the rumors you've passed on about others. He knows about your feelings of jealousy, resentment, thoughts of revenge. He knows about your lack of prayer and your lack of a desire to read the Word. He knows how you really think of your wife. He knows all about your secret habits, how selfish you are, how vain you are, what you watch on TV, how you spend that extra money, how you want others' envy, and how you envy others. Even if from external appearances you've been pretty good in your life by comparison to others. Perhaps you grew up in church or had a Christian parents who taught you well and you kept your nose clean. If that describes you, then more than anyone, you have reason to cringe because you know the act you are performing. Maybe you're so proficient at it that your wife and kids are even fooled. And of all people, you know better. You above anyone else has no excuses. If you're still thinking you're good enough, read the rest of the Sermon on the Mount. Have you ever relaxed one of the least of the commandments in the Old Testament? Jesus said that. Oh, what about gluttony? Or have you ever lied or cursed or gossiped? Can your righteousness exceed that of the devoted scribes and Pharisees of Jesus' day who wouldn't even walk a mile on the Sabbath day? Jesus said it must. Can you live without anger or lusting or swearing or resisting an evil person? Do you give a thief even more than what he's trying to steal from you? Do you give freely, not loan, but a gift to someone who just wants a loan? Do you really love your enemies? And here's the kicker. Can you claim perfection as God defines perfection? All of those high standards of behavior are straight from Matthew chapter 5. And it gets even harder in Matthew 6 and 7. Hey, let's be honest and not play games. No one can live up to that standard. Yet that's exactly what Jesus is asking us to do in no uncertain terms. God's standard is high because he is infinitely holy and good and righteous and just. Now, nobody's trying to make you feel bad or beat you up. I'm not. You just need to be honest. Don't compare yourself with others. God won't. Standing naked before God with all your sin and thoughts and habits and shortcomings, why cover it up? Why play a game? He already knows it all. And that thing that you hope no one will ever know about you, he knows. He was there. His cameras were running. And next to his perfect righteousness and purity, you're pretty dirty. No, you're infinitely polluted, and so am I. Acknowledge your spiritual poverty, guys. Like Paul, admit, I do the very thing I hate. I know that nothing good dwells in me. If you can do that, though, if you can admit your spiritual bankruptcy, you have hope. Because that's exactly what God requires. Simple honesty about that truth. But if you can't, well, you probably just need to stop right there. Because there's no need to go further. But because like the rich young ruler, you need to just walk away sad or mad. There's more hope for a full-grown camel to slip through the eye of a sewing needle than for you to find God, according to Christ. So just don't waste anyone's time. Now, before you leave, please ask someone to pray for you, but I hope that you're still staying. For those of you with the courage to admit the truth after the difficult task of prying your gripping fingers from the false sense of pride that you've maintained and protected for so long, know this. Jesus said you can have part in the eternal, extra-dimensional, sensory overloading, ever-satisfying kingdom of heaven. The one about which the Bible says, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, nor heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 2:9. The place Jesus said he would go to prepare for us. This admitting your spiritual bankruptcy is the first and most important essential step in that direction. So guys, the place I'm standing right now is not by accident. This is called Magnet Mills. It's actually in Clinton. It used to be the #1 income bringer to Clinton. They made men's socks here and sold them all over the country. Started way back in the early 1900s. And it was once this huge brick building, and anybody near Clinton knows all about it. But recently it's been scraped. I mean, it's been destroyed, destructed, and taken away. And I'm standing under this water tower here that's really pretty much all that's left. It had fallen into ruin. It had problems. Not just the facility, but the company that owned the facility had problems. And you know what? The only answer, it came to be concluded that the only answer was to just destroy it, to take it away, to scrape it. And you know what's great about that? Is because of that brokenness and because of that destruction, And because of that, admitting that this once powerful company was in trouble, now they're going to make a brand new Riverside, beautiful, very important, just more blessing to anybody new project. But first, the old Magnet Mills building had to be destructed. It had to be brought down to size. It had to be taken away. Just like our old pride, just like our own self-righteousness has to be taken away so that I can be a blessing, so that I can be not just receiving God's blessing, but so I can be a blessing to others. Guys, this is the first step. Now have a great time talking to each other.